Biblical scholars have argued for years about the location of these holy sites. Now, one man says he might have found them.
For centuries, Mount Sinai has been one of the most sacred places on earth, a mountain said to burn with fire when the divine descended upon it.
I'm at the base of a mountain believed to be the location of the true Mount Sinai, where Moses received the 10 Commandments from God.
But beneath its ancient surface, something has been waiting. After years of secrecy, archaeologists have finally opened a sealed vault hidden deep below the mountain. What they discovered inside has left scientists, historians, and religious leaders completely stunned. The mountain that shouldn't be where it is. For centuries, people believed that the true Mount Sinai stood firmly in Egypt. It was the sacred mountain where, according to Scripture, Moses received the 10 Commandments. But in recent years, a small group of researchers began claiming otherwise. They argued that the real Mount Sinai might actually lie across the Red Sea, in northwestern Saudi Arabia, at a place known as Jabal al-Lawz. They based their claim on blackened peaks, stone altars, and boundary markers that seemed to match the biblical description of the holy mountain. The theory caused an uproar in religious and academic circles. Governments restricted expeditions, and debates quickly grew heated. Yet when archaeologists revisited the site, their findings left little room for doubt. It wasn't the mountain described in Scripture. Later excavations around St. Catherine's Monastery uncovered ancient pilgrim carvings and early Christian relics that aligned perfectly with the biblical route of the Exodus, reinforcing Egypt's claim. The mountain in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula remains the most credible location. That was where the ancient pilgrims walked, where the monastery still stood, and where the mountain still towered in silence. Mount Sinai, deep in Egypt's rugged desert, is no ordinary mountain. Its dark summit looks scorched, as if burned by fire long ago. Geologists say the rock's blackened color comes from natural basalt, but many remain unconvinced. Pilgrims have long believed the surface was burned when divine fire descended on it. Even more puzzling are the strange electromagnetic readings detected around the mountain. According to geological survey data from the 1980s, compasses near the summit frequently lost calibration. Metal instruments gave off faint static sounds, and researchers recorded short bursts of magnetic interference that appeared and disappeared without explanation. These findings deepened the mystery and drew even more attention to the mountain's peculiar nature. In the early 2000s, researchers studying desert erosion ran satellite thermal scans across the Sinai region. What they found added another layer of confusion. High-resolution images revealed unusual hotspots near the southern base of the mountain. At night, when the desert cooled rapidly, those same areas remained warm. No known geological process fully accounted for it. Some believed the heat signatures came from mineral deposits or underground vents, but others speculated that something hidden beneath the mountain could be generating energy. The local Bedouin tribes, nomadic people who have lived in the Sinai desert for generations, have their own stories about the mountain. They say it breathes at night. Shepherds have described feeling soft vibrations through the sand when the air is still. Some claim it sounds like a slow heartbeat coming from deep below. According to local belief, the pulse is a sign that the mountain is alive. It is said to be the spirit of the mountain itself, resting until the time of revelation. Intrigued by these tales, researchers placed instruments near the same valleys the Bedouins spoke of. When seismographs recorded faint rhythmic movements from those locations, the stories no longer seem so easy to dismiss. In a desert where everything lies still, Mount Sinai stands apart. It hums, radiates heat, and distorts the very instruments meant to measure it. These phenomena have drawn scientists from around the world back to Egypt's barren frontier. They arrived not to chase myths, but to understand why this sacred mountain behaves in ways that defy nature. Their search for answers led them to the only place that has watched the mountain longer than any living soul, the monastery that sits quietly at its base, keeping guard over what lies beneath. The murmurs beneath the stone. At the foot of Mount Sinai stands St. Catherine's Monastery. Inside its sealed archives, a small research team uncovered forgotten records that described something strange beneath the sacred rock. The manuscripts, written in Greek and Coptic, recorded events witnessed by early monks. They spoke of low tremors under the floor during prayer. At first, the monks dismissed these movements as natural signs of holiness, but later writings suggested that their faith turned to fear. The records also described mysterious lights that appeared along the mountain ridges after night nightfall. Witnesses said the flashes were pale blue and lasted only a few seconds before fading into darkness. Those who tried to reach the lights found nothing when they arrived. During violent storms, the monks reported hearing faint voices carried on the wind, sounds that seemed to come from the cliffs themselves. According to the monastery's oldest scrolls, the head monk in charge of the monastery ordered everyone to stop speaking about the incidents. He feared that the strange events would disturb the monks' faith and sanity. The reports were sealed in the archives, buried under centuries of dust and forgotten. When modern scientists read these accounts, they recognized that the descriptions matched the strange tremors recently recorded near the mountain's base. To test it, seismologists, the scientists who study earthquakes and ground movement, installed new instruments beneath the monastery. The readings confirmed what locals had described for generations. Beneath Mount Sinai, something was moving. The vibrations were steady and repeated at fixed intervals, unlike any known seismic activity. When electromagnetic sensors were placed near the monastery's rear wall, the results were even more unsettling. The instruments detected a pulse that repeated every 11 seconds. It was unaffected by weather, daylight, or temperature. The signal did not match any natural frequency in the region. Some experts suggested it might come from mineral vibration or an underground fault. Others believed it pointed to something artificial, a hidden chamber reflecting energy from below. Researchers began searching for more evidence in the monastery itself. They discovered faint carvings in the courtyard that had been deliberately chiseled away. Under certain light, the remaining words could still be read. The mountain keeps what it swallows. The phrase appeared in records dating back more than 1,000 years, hinting that earlier monks knew more than they had ever revealed. The findings unsettled everyone involved. The tremors continued, stronger and more frequent. The once quiet monastery was no longer still. To understand what they were dealing with, researchers turned to old records, journals, and maps from explorers who had once walked these same slopes in search of answers. The Forgotten Explorers and the Hidden Map. Long before modern satellites and scanners, Mount Sinai had already drawn the curiosity of explorers who came searching for proof of the stories written in Scripture. In the 19th century, European travelers crossed the harsh desert with little more than notebooks and compasses. Many of them were driven by faith, others by ambition, but all left behind journals that spoke of strange things they could not explain. Some reported geometric carvings etched into the slopes of Sinai, patterns that seemed too precise to be formed by wind or erosion. Their guides called them marks of the old ones, but the explorers assumed they were natural. The records show that most of their findings were dismissed when they returned home, labeled as exaggerations or mistakes born of exhaustion. Among these explorers, a few stood out. They sketched repeating shapes they saw near the western cliffs of the mountain. Each described two entwined serpents surrounding a hollow circle. The same image appeared in several journals written years apart by men who never met each other. Historians later noted that the design resembled ancient symbols for guardianship or protection, though none could explain why it appeared at Sinai. Some archaeologists have suggested it might represent the twin peaks of the mountain or an old emblem used by early desert tribes, yet others believe it marked something much deeper, a warning to stay away from what lay below. The oldest reference to this pattern comes from a forgotten Italian traveler named Matteo de Rossi. In 1693, he recorded that he had purchased a small copper plate from Bedouin traders while traveling through the Sinai Peninsula. The plate, according to his notes, was covered with delicate etchings of lines and spirals descending into the earth beneath a mountain that locals called the Seat of Fire. De Rossi believed it to be a symbolic artifact, possibly created by early Christian monks. He sent it to Rome for study, but no record of the artifact itself was ever found again. Only his sketches and written descriptions survived. Centuries later, researchers examining Vatican archives rediscovered de Rossi's notes. When they compared his drawings to modern satellite images, they were stunned by the resemblance. The spiraling pattern he described matched the same region that now shows the mountain's unexplained heat anomalies. When they digitally overlaid his sketch onto a thermal scan, the spirals aligned perfectly with the hotspots recorded at the southern base of Mount Sinai. To many, it appeared to trace a path downward, a route that led directly beneath St. Catherine's Monastery. Some experts viewed this as coincidence, but others found it impossible to ignore. Historians began re-examining the old explorers' maps and realized that, without understanding what they had found, these travelers might have documented the first evidence of a man-made structure buried deep below Sinai. The serpents, the circle, and the spirals could have been symbolic markers left by earlier cultures to warn or to guide. The discovery reignited old debates about whether the mountain's secrets were entirely natural or the result of deliberate design. For the first time, the fragmented stories from the past began to align with the data of the present. What had once been dismissed as legend was starting to look like a forgotten map to something hidden in the mountain's heart. If these clues were real, only modern technology could confirm what earlier generations had merely imagined. When the machines looked under the mountain. In 2018, a joint expedition arrived in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula under the cover of a standard geological survey. In reality, the team's mission was far more ambitious. For the first time, Egyptologists, engineers, and physicists were working together to explore what lay beneath Mount Sinai itself. The group included specialists from Egypt, France, and Japan, each bringing technology that could see into the earth without disturbing a single grain of sand. Their goal was simple: to determine whether the strange tremors, heat signatures, and ancient markings hinted at something constructed deep within the mountain. The operation began near St. Catherine's Monastery, where access had been carefully negotiated through religious and governmental channels. The monastery's walls provided the perfect base for the team's equipment. Using ground-penetrating radar, the scientists sent powerful radio waves into the bedrock and recorded their reflections. At first, the results were unremarkable: dense layers of rock, fissures, and small pockets of sand. But as the scans pushed deeper, the readings began to change. The reflections started returning in straight lines and right angles, shapes that nature rarely creates. To verify the findings, the team added LiDAR and muon tomography to their analysis. LiDAR used lasers to create precise 3D models of the subsurface, while muon tomography, originally developed for studying volcanoes and pyramids, measured the density of the rock using cosmic particles. Within days, the combined data began to form a clear image. Hidden beneath the mountain were massive voids arranged in geometric patterns. The largest of these anomalies stretched nearly 50 meters in length, with walls so smooth and even that the scientists struggled to believe it was natural. According to the reports, one structure stood out above the rest. It appeared rectangular in shape, buried several hundred meters below the monastery. Its proportions were exact, its corners aligned with mathematical precision. Geological formations are rough, irregular, and random, yet this cavity was symmetrical from every angle. A separate set of muon readings revealed denser stone surrounding its perimeter, forming what looked like a sealed boundary. One physicist described it as a doorway cut from the inside out. The results caused immediate concern among Egyptian authorities. Once word reached Cairo, the government quietly issued new restrictions on research in the area, citing heritage preservation and the need to protect religious landmarks. The team was ordered to halt field operations until official clearance could be reviewed. But by that time, they had already gathered weeks of data. The maps were complete, and the evidence was undeniable. Some members of the team continued their work in private, analyzing the readings long after leaving the desert. According to unverified reports, several experts concluded that the cavity was too precise and too deep to have been carved with ancient tools. Whatever was buried under Sinai, it had been sealed deliberately and left untouched for thousands of years. For the researchers, the discovery was both thrilling and unsettling. The mountain that once seemed untouchable had just revealed a secret no one was prepared to confront. The instruments had seen through the rock, and what they found suggested that Mount Sinai's legends might be rooted in something real. With the evidence mounting, the next step was no longer speculation. The world's attention was about to turn toward a single goal: opening whatever the earth had hidden beneath the sacred mountain. The descent into the Forbidden Vault. Months after the discovery of the underground structure, the Egyptian government authorized a controlled mission under international supervision. The team that gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai was unlike any in recent history. Archaeologists, linguists, engineers, and physicists from over 10 nations arrived under heavy security. Every move was monitored, every device logged. The mission's objective was clear: confirm what lay inside the rectangular cavity that the scans had revealed 2 years earlier. Traditional excavation methods were out of the question. The site was too sacred and unstable for humans to enter. Instead, Engineers used advanced robotic machines equipped with laser drills, ground scanners, and remote-controlled arms capable of cutting through solid rock with extreme precision. The plan was to reach the anomaly without causing any structural damage to the mountain. The drilling took place near the southern ridge, at a point where the data suggested the rock was strongest. For weeks, the crew worked through the blistering desert heat, operating in 12-hour shifts while military guards surrounded the perimeter. According to reports, the final breakthrough came after 42 days of careful drilling. As the machinery pierced the last layer of stone, the instruments began recording rapid changes. Pressure sensors detected a sudden drop in air density, suggesting that the drill had opened into a hollow, sealed environment. The atmosphere inside the void was completely untouched, preserved for thousands of years. The team immediately halted operations to stabilize the tunnel. Once the opening was secured, engineers deployed a small robotic arm fitted with a plasma cutter to widen the passage. It moved slowly, clearing fragments from the rock until the hole was just wide enough for a probe to enter. After the path was cleared, the team lowered a remote-controlled drone through the narrow shaft. The device carried a high-resolution camera, environmental sensors, and mapping equipment. As its lights flickered on, the feed showed a smooth wall made of sandstone, polished to perfection. The camera panned slowly, revealing a massive doorway carved directly into the rock. It stood over 4 meters high and appeared to be formed from a single block of stone. Every surface was covered in intricate carvings. Archaeologists on site quickly noticed markings written in Proto-Sinaitic, one of the earliest known alphabets ever used in the ancient Near East. But mixed among those symbols were letters from early Hebrew, a language that developed centuries later. The two scripts were separated by nearly 1,000 years of history, yet here they were, engraved side by side on the same doorway, a combination that should have been impossible. As the team began to analyze the markings, linguists reported that one section of the inscription appeared to contain a warning. Translated fragments read, "Fire guards what was given, disturb not the covenant below." The words sparked tension among the team members. Some took it as a sacred message left by ancient priests. Others viewed it as a symbolic inscription meant to deter intruders. Still, the warning unsettled everyone. Then the instruments began to malfunction. The probe's magnetic sensors spiked violently each time they approached the door. Communications briefly dropped, and the screens flickered with static. Engineers later confirmed that the electromagnetic interference came from within the sealed chamber itself. No known mineral or natural cause could explain it. The readings repeated at irregular intervals, almost like pulses. Despite the growing unease, the team decided to proceed. Permission was granted to use the robotic arm again, this time to breach the seal. The atmosphere in the command tent was tense. No one spoke as the mechanical device made its first contact with the ancient doorway. When the plasma tool touched the stone, the magnetic field around it surged again, distorting the camera feed for several seconds. After hours of careful work, the door finally gave way with a low echo that rolled through the rock like distant thunder. The sensors detected a rush of air escaping from the void. The team stared at their monitors as the drone crossed the threshold. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was looking into the depths beneath Mount Sinai. What they were about to see would leave them speechless. When the cameras finally rolled into the darkness, the world witnessed what no scripture had ever described: the vault that shouldn't exist. The robotic drone crossed the doorway and its cameras switched on. The light showed a long corridor stretching forward into complete darkness. The air inside was still. There was no movement, no dust, and no sign that anything had entered for thousands of years. The walls were built from sandstone blocks that fit together so tightly the lines between them could hardly be seen. The floor was clean and flat, as if someone had polished it before the chamber was sealed. As the drone moved deeper, the team realized this was not a cave or a natural opening. It was a man-made structure built with precision far beyond anything expected from its time. When the drone's camera adjusted, the carvings came into view. They were unlike anything ever found in the Sinai region. The walls showed tall figures standing over kneeling people, their bodies surrounded by rings that looked like fire. The taller figures reached out their hands, and from their palms came narrow streams that ended in shapes like glowing tablets. Beside these scenes were other carvings, rows of stars, circles that looked like suns, and shapes that resembled tools or rods being raised toward the sky. Near the floor, one panel showed a mountain split open, revealing a chamber inside. At its center was the same tablet shape, drawn larger and brighter than all the rest. As the drone advanced, the chamber widened, the sandstone blocks were polished to a mirror finish, and the light from the probe reflected sharply off the walls. No tool marks or chisel grooves were visible. The measurements showed perfect alignment, accurate within fractions of a millimeter. The workmanship was beyond anything known from ancient builders. Carbon dating of the outer material placed the surrounding rock at over 3,000 years old, deepening the mystery. At the center of the vault stood a rectangular structure covered in gold. The light reflected across its surface, revealing patterns of stars and constellations engraved into the panels. The shape was similar to the biblical descriptions of the Ark of the Covenant, but it appeared larger and more complex, built from denser material than anything seen in the chamber. The inscriptions carved around its base belonged to no known culture. The team could not agree on what it was: a chest, a shrine, or something else entirely. Nearby, sealed containers were stacked in rows, coated in hardened resin. When the drone's sampling arm brushed one, a soft hiss escaped and a trace of gas leaked into the still air. Inside were scrolls wrapped in brittle cloth and fragments of stone tablets marked with symbols that glowed faintly under infrared light. The scientists watched from the control tent, silent as the images appeared on their monitors, aware that they were uncovering something that might have been meant to remain hidden. Along the side walls, metal rods and crystal formations protruded from the sandstone. They emitted steady electromagnetic bursts that repeatedly interfered with the drone's signal. The reading showed a precise rhythm that analysts later compared to a coded transmission. Laboratory tests on small fragments revealed isotopic ratios not found in any known metal on Earth. One piece released low-level radiation that forced technicians to stop analysis and seal it for safety. Whatever the material was, it did not originate in Egypt. At the far end of the chamber stood a circular pedestal supporting a transparent sphere about the size of a human head. It emitted a cold blue light that shifted slowly in color. As the probe approached, the light intensified and began pulsing in sync with the drone's electrical signal. The operators froze, watching as the glow grew brighter. Then, without warning, the video feed cut to static. Technicians tried to restore the signal, but the monitors only showed distortion. The electromagnetic levels spiked far beyond safe limits, and then every system in the tent failed at once. The last frame captured by the camera showed the sphere shining white, flooding the entire chamber with light just before everything went dark. The world reacts to the impossible. When the footage from the Sinai vault leaked, the world divided almost immediately. Religious leaders from several faiths said the discovery confirmed what their scriptures had preserved for centuries. Some called it the most important archaeological proof of a divine encounter. Scientists were not so quick to agree. They warned that the images should be studied carefully and that no one should rush to call the chamber a holy site without complete verification. The tension between belief and evidence became the center of global discussion. Within days, the Egyptian government raised security around Mount Sinai and the monastery. The area was declared a protected and restricted zone. Civilian teams were removed. Access for journalists was denied. Officials said it was to prevent looting and to protect religious heritage. Unverified reports claimed that several international agencies requested private briefings about what was found below the mountain. The sudden silence from the site made people even more suspicious. Laboratories that received approved samples began publishing internal notes. The results did not match. Some materials tested as a few thousand years old, which was expected. Others appeared far older than any known human structure. A few samples showed isotopic compositions that did not match regional geology. According to some researchers, one of the crystal fragments behaved more like a device than a relic. It produced a weak but repeating energy signal. That detail was never officially released to the public. In academic circles, a small group of physicists began to say quietly that the readings from the glowing sphere looked similar to controlled resonance fields studied in modern labs. If that was true, then whoever built the chamber understood how to stabilize energy inside rock. At the same time, the Vatican formally asked for copies of the inscriptions. Senior Islamic scholars also reviewed the images and noted that some lines sounded close to early descriptions of the light of Allah mentioned in classical texts. Everyone wanted the discovery to match their tradition. Theories spread everywhere. Some said the vault held the original tablets and was sealed by early priests. Others said it was evidence of a pre-biblical civilization that mastered energy. A smaller group claimed it was not meant for worship at all, but for storage and protection. In the middle of the debate, translators released one full line from the inner chamber. It read, "Guard the words until the awakening of man." That sentence slowed the arguments. It suggested that the chamber was not built to glorify the past, but to wait for the future. Whatever the truth is, the vault beneath Mount Sinai has forced the world to question everything we thought we knew about faith, history, and human origins. So, what do you think lies deeper under the mountain? A divine relic, a forgotten civilization, or something humanity was never meant to find? Share your theory below and tell us what you believe really hides beneath Mount Sinai. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.